Hello, and welcome to Nosotros, the podcast about San Antonio politics, history, and culture. I'm your host, Elaine Ayala, Metro columnist for the San Antonio Express News. And my guest today is Sarah Gould, Executive Director of the Mexican American Civil Rights Institute, one of the city's historical treasures still in the making. Welcome, Sarah, and thanks for coming to Nosotros.
Thank you so much. It's my honor to be here with you.
I have lots to get to. We'll start with this one. The founding of Macri wasn't that long ago, but was a dream project for so many people. Take us back to what went on in its creation and how it seemed to grow so quickly.
You're absolutely right. This was a dream of many people to create an entity that would collect and disseminate and share Mexican American civil rights history with the public. So we are about to turn 5. We will turn 5 in May of this year, 2024. We were officially incorporated in May of 2019, and we had been having planning meetings up before we actually incorporated. But all of those planning meetings essentially came out of a couple of major 50th anniversary commemorations that happened here in San Antonio. So for those who don't know, San Antonio has long been the cradle of Mexican American civil rights activity in the United States. All kinds of civil rights activity.
I just got goosebumps.
Well, and you know what? I hope everybody does, because really this is a very special place, and it's a special place for a number of reasons, but absolutely one of them is all of the civil rights work that has happened here. So in 2018 and 2019, we had a couple of big 50th anniversary commemorations, one for the school walkouts that happened here with Mexican American students, and in some cases their parents even protesting the unequal treatment of Mexican American students in our public schools, and also the 50th anniversary of the U.S. Commission on Civil Rights hearings that were held here, which brought to national attention the ways that Mexican Americans were being discriminated against and that it wasn't recognized very well at the federal level. So it really
Those were landmark meetings in which people from all over the country, especially the Southwest, came to testify, to give examples to the federal government, and in that case, the Civil Rights Commission, to tell them what was happening in their schools, in their cities, in their federal agencies, in their state agencies. It was monumental.
Absolutely. And this is stuff that, Mexican Americans knew that we were discriminated against, that we had been since, 1848, 1836, if not earlier. But was that recognized outside of our communities? Not so much. And so when those commemorations happened, a lot of people who were at those original events were able to come to the commemorations, talk about their own experiences, share that with younger generations. And so in the aftermath of those, there was a lot of conversation about how do we keep this history alive? How do we continue to ensure that our community knows about Mexican American civil rights history and the role that Mexican Americans have played in advancing democracy?
And which gets me to the idea that even though it's San Antonio founded, and certainly there's good reason for that, Macri, that's the acronym for Mexican American Civil Rights Institute, which I love, it sounds Spanish. Macri sees itself as a national entity, a national place. Tell us how that is coming to bear.
Yes. So in 2019, when we came together with this solidified idea, our founding board took this idea to the mayor and city council and said, this is an opportunity to put San Antonio on the map nationally as this hub of Mexican American civil rights work this is something to highlight what San Antonio means to the nation, but also, we are the largest Hispanic majority city in the country. We are a city that's over, 67% Latino.
And that's probably a conservative figure if we're using census figures.
Yes, absolutely. So fortunately, the city saw the opportunity to highlight San Antonio on a national level as a major player in, again, thinking about democracy. And so this is, the idea here is that, yes, we want the public to know about all of the ways that San Antonio, people from San Antonio, organizations either founded or that really blossomed in San Antonio have worked towards Mexican-American civil rights here, but also how those people and those organizations have had a national influence and national connections. I mean, if we think about civil rights activism of Mexican Americans in, say, the Midwest, places like Ohio and Michigan, Wisconsin, so many of those Mexican Americans have family roots here in Texas.
Absolutely.
Right? Those migratory patterns. And even if you think about something like the Chicano movement in Denver, there were absolutely conversations between people here in San Antonio and Denver. Today, there are growing populations of Mexican Americans in what sometimes we call the New South. Mm-hmm. And a lot of those people, again, at some point passed through Texas or have connections here. So I believe San Antonio will continue to be a major hub for Mexican American civil rights work. But it's an opportunity for us to maybe transform or expand what people associate with San Antonio. We're more than the Riverwalk. We're more than the Alamo. We also have this amazing civil rights history. And I'm hoping that people nationally will start to associate that with San Antonio.
And I'm sure I'm accused of being a bit of a cheerleader for San Antonio. I'd rather see it as an ambassador. But we are, as geographers and scholars have said and written, that we are the most Mexican of U.S. cities, and that we are indeed, in addition to being a civil rights hub, we are the Mexican-American cultural capital of the United States. And I don't care if I'm accused of anything for saying that.
It's absolutely true.
It was founded, and then came the pandemic. And in a way, that societal tragedy and pause gave Macri the time to work on building itself in another way with online content. Tell us about that and what that created.
Right. So it is a, who could have predicted that out of this national global tragedy, the pandemic, which did in many ways disproportionately impact communities of color, including Latinos. Like everybody else, we had to figure out, okay, how do we pivot? We were only several months old at that point. And so we started doing what everybody was doing and using digital platforms and creating virtual content. It was, I hate to say it.
It was phenomenal. Okay.
Well, here's what happened.
For a person who was home all the time and just felt stranded. I'm such a social person, so I felt stranded. So I connected with y'all along with other groups where I went to a lot of your sessions.
I just hate to say that it worked out well for us because that sounds
I know
horrible.
It sounds horrible, but
we were able to reach just thousands of people. And
it would have taken a lot longer had it been done the traditional way.
Absolutely. Our live streams were attracting 200 viewers at a time, and then people would watch them later on. So at this point, we've had something like 100,000 people watch our online events.
Oh, that's
which is
wonderful.
Wild.
It is.
The other interesting thing is just under half of the people who've watched our online programs are from the San Antonio area. And the other half are from other places. Obviously, we're everywhere.
Yes.
But also, I think that it just tells you that people are interested in this topic. Mm-hmm. And I also think it speaks to the fact that for a lot of folks, we never got to learn this stuff in school.
Oh, so on point. Mm-hmm. It wasn't in our history books. We struggled. Some of us were a little older than your generation. It took, I was halfway through college before I read Yo Soy Joaquin or some of the great civil rights, epic, books of the time. And, I remember there was one, I was at the University of Pennsylvania, and there was one class I could take that was about the Chicano movement. And, we were all so amazed, so grateful. It was like going to a temple when we went to this class. And, part of it was novels, part of it was, which were very historically based. So yes, we were hungry for it. And I think young people are still hungry for it.
Absolutely. We've been so pleased to learn that some of our virtual programs, which are all available on YouTube, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
That they have been used in classrooms at the both high school and community college level. I know that some of our videos are being used. We've been so fortunate that we've been able to bring some of the top scholars in Mexican American civil rights history to these virtual events so that just whoever wants to tune in can write in their questions and get them answered. So we're really excited about being able to offer that kind of access. But also, if you wonder why something like Macri didn't happen before, I think we needed to have the kind of body of scholarship and the number of scholars that we have now, because we're able to draw from the work that has been established. Mm-hmm. But in many cases, there weren't that many people studying Mexican American civil rights history until, say, maybe the mid-90s.
Yes, because they all came to be and went to college in the late 1960s and 70s. And what was so amazing to me when I listened in, now I can't even remember the topic, that this young scholar from Harvard spoke about is, he mentioned his parents were also scholars and that they had written books. And, so now you have someone like San Antonian historian David Montejano, who's written 2 seminal books. Yeah. About Mexican American civil rights, that it was his generation. Now he's retired as professor emeritus, but it took that long for all of these books to be written. I want you to give some examples of some of the topics you tackled that were both San Antonio inspired or South Texas inspired, but then maybe some that were from other parts of the country that now have become part of your library.
Sure. So for sure here in San Antonio, we wanted to highlight some of the early civil rights efforts. So we had a talk you can find on YouTube about the Order Sons of America. The Order Sons of America is one of the earliest civil rights focused.
Pre-LULAC.
Pre-LULAC. In fact, they're one of the 3 organizations that merged to create LULAC, but they were founded here in San Antonio. And there were earlier organizations that did civil rights work, but that wasn't necessarily their entire focus. Whereas Order Sons of America, that's what the plan was. Mm-hmm. We're going to tackle, how do we get treated equally?
And we're talking early 1900s, right?
Early 1900s.
They already saw the disparity and the poverty and the lack of access to education.
Yes. And lack of access to education is one of the things that really spurred a lot of people to action, that they did not want their children growing up discriminated against, having unequal access to schools, paying into the same tax system that everybody else was, but the schools were segregated here and across the Southwest. So Order Sons of America is a great one. Of course, we've done a lot of work to highlight some of our civil rights trailblazers here in the city. So we've done programs on everyone from Maria Antonieta Berriozabal to some of the older folks, earlier generation, I should say. Emma Tenayuca, there's a YouTube program on that. Of course, Jovita Idar, we did an entire one-day symposium.
Yay, I love that subject. And then you also did some on civil rights lawyers and trailblazers who ended up in fighting major court cases on a dime. And those were interesting to me too.
Yes, we had to have the legal approach in order to change policy. And so we want people to know that. And, I would love for us to get to a place in society where folks are just as familiar with Brown versus Board of Education as they are with Hernandez versus Texas, or
a major civil rights case that was argued in front of the Supreme Court, and a San Antonio-based lawyer whose name escapes me now. Gus Garcia, who when he argued the case in front of the Supreme Court for one of the very first times in history, and still one of the only times, was given more time because they knew nothing about Mexican Americans, and some of their questions were absolutely appalling. And these were our Supreme Court justices at the time.
Yeah. Yeah.
It takes my breath away all the time. You also did some interesting programs that involved people in the Midwest and their fights for justice. Can you think of one now that you could share?
Sure. We just recently did one on, Mexican Americans in Indiana. And this,
I love that. I love the title.
Well, during the revolution, when a lot of Mexicans were leaving Mexico and coming into the United States, some of them ended up traveling further north. Some of them, just ended up in Texas or Arizona or California. Some of them kept going north. And so the industrial Midwest attracted quite a few people during that period. So the Mexican Americans in Indiana kind of date to that Mexican Revolution period, and then, of course, later waves too. This summer, we're actually doing a summer road trip series, is what we're calling it. So we'll be going to Kansas City, and we'll be going to Wisconsin to learn about Mexican Americans in those two places.
I want to go back a little bit to why San Antonio is a good place for the Mexican American Civil Rights Institute, and why its leadership believes that it has the potential to be a destination. What's ahead for Macri as a full-fledged brick and mortar institution?
Right. So after the pandemic started to calm down a bit, we started thinking about how can we establish a physical location so that we can start doing some hybrid programming. We didn't want to lose all of the virtual viewers that we started building across the United States, but we knew that people were missing being together. And so we were able to open a visitor center on the West Side. We're calling it a visitor center because it's not huge, but it's 3,000 square feet. And I definitely want to thank Henry and Mary Alice Cisneros for helping us acquire that space. So we've got our visitor center, but there is a vision for down the road. We want to continue to offer what we've been doing to, again, collect and share Mexican American civil rights history through public programs, we have an online exhibit called Chispas. We're working on a physical exhibit that will be in the visitor center, and then it will be portable so it can go travel. But we see a future where Latinos are going to be about a third of the U.S. population. We see a future where Latinos are going to be looking for heritage tourism opportunities. We already have a very robust tourism industry here in San Antonio. And while we've got the Spanish missions, which are, a wonderful destination for international travelers, we don't necessarily have a space where you can learn about the history of Mexican Americans and their impact on the United States. We have some wonderful arts organizations here. So anybody would be fortunate to travel to San Antonio and see one of those performances or art shows. But I think we have something more to add to San Antonio's offerings, both for our locals and for our visitors. We want people to know that for generations, Mexican Americans have been working to advance democracy. We want Mexican Americans to know that, to feel empowered by that, to understand that they are part of a lineage that has been, contributing in ways that we can all work to continue to improve civil rights for all. And I think that we can become a national destination. What happened a few years ago, some folks may have noticed this, when the Smithsonian opened the National Museum of African American History and Culture, it was very popular. They had to have timed tickets. It spurred an interest in African American history, and it spurred a wave of African American heritage tourism. So heritage tourism means tourists who are going because they want to learn about history and culture. It spurred a wave of African American heritage tourism worth millions of dollars. And as a result, African American history museums just started sprouting up. And it's a thing that people do now.
It's good.
It's huge.
It's great. And we need more places like that.
I think that we are due for something similar for Latinos, and hopefully things will continue to move forward with the Smithsonian's planned National Museum of the American Latino.
Absolutely.
But I think San Antonio is positioned to be at the forefront of that wave of Latino heritage tourism.
So and this will be sort of towards my closing. I don't know how much you can say just yet, but there you are looking, aren't you, for sites? You are planning for this eventuality.
We understand that our visitor center is not going to contain us forever. So we'll be there for a while. Yes. Yeah, we have engaged a local firm to do a site feasibility study to see about the potential for a future national museum here. That would be our public facing side of our work. We would still have the research side and the teacher training and workshop side, but to better engage multi-generational families, to better be embedded in our tourism economy, we are looking at what would be some kind of public-facing museum that we could have here in San Antonio.
Oh my God. I'm so excited. And on that note, that's as good a closing as I can ever offer, Sarah. That's going to do it for this episode of Nosotros. Thanks to Sarah Gould, the Executive Director of the Mexican American Civil Rights Institute, for joining us. And please share this twice a month podcast with your friends and relatives. I'd love to have them join us. This video version of Nosotros can be found on YouTube, but you can listen to my podcast and others at the Express News on our website, expressnews.com. And, that's going to be under the podcast tab, but you can get our podcasts in other places where you get your podcasts. My Metro column appears every Wednesday and Friday in the Express News, and my email address is Elaine Ayala at express-news.net. I'd love to hear from you. Thanks for joining us.